Welcome to the Fitness Plus Technology Podcast for club owners, operators, and fitness professionals. Each week, host Bryan O'Rourke brings you an expert interview with a global influencer at the crossroads of fitness and technology. You gain the insights, tools, and inspiration you need to stay connected to the pulse for what matters most for your business in the age of exponential technologies.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to the Fitness Plus Technology Podcast. Bryan O'Rourke here, and we have another super guest today. She doesn't need much of an introduction, but for those who don't know, and I've known Emma for well over a decade, Emma was one of the founding members of the group fitness brand Les Mills International. And she also served as director of group fitness programming for Equinox. She advises, globally a number of well-known brands. She speaks and works on product development, training, people, and culture. Emma has several books out. You'll see in the show notes from Black Box Publishing. I've written some books with Emma as part of the EuropeActive offering through Black Box. And, just a super lady who's a great mix of both futurist views on the space and pragmatic aspects of implementation, user design, and business models. So I'm very, very happy to have Emma on the program. I hope you enjoyed this interview very much and, wishing you a fabulous rest of October. So without further ado, here's Emma Berry.
As I mentioned in the intro, this is a lady that I had to chase down over months because she's so globally around the world. For people that give me a grief about how much I travel, she makes me look like a neophyte for certain. Emma, where are you talking to us from? Are you on the west coast of California, Emma? Where are
I
you?
am. I'm at home, Bryan. I'm very happy to be home.
Me too.
California, Redondo Beach.
Great. We're actually both at our home, our offices. That's amazing. What is it? Well, how often does that happen? Once every 100 years or 10 years?
No, it's good. No, I try to travel less than half my time and working on bringing that back for sure. Because now we have technology. Technology can take all our ideas out there, Bryan.
That's exactly right. As I mentioned in the intro, you've got some great books out there. I've loved watching you present. You have such a great background. So we were talking in advance of this, and we already got the conversation started. So tell me about the boutique phenomenon and the impact of technology for the listeners in your view. Because this is a recent trend. You pay a lot of attention to this stuff. What are your comments on that? What do you see?
Yes, we've seen boutique really peaking in different markets. So we always look at New York and LA sort of as the prime movers. London, of course, is in boutique hysteria right now, as are parts of Asia. And then it's sort of coming to secondary cities. And all you have to do is follow ClassPass to know pretty much where boutiques are sort of going into a frenzy next. And I remember, fairly recently, Amsterdam and Auckland, by way of example, two cities close to my heart, all of a sudden got ClassPass. So look, it's traveling around the world. It starts in the more affluent cities. And not always, I shouldn't just say that, because things like Orange Theory actually started suburbanly and are actually have long legs into areas that aren't perhaps, some of the more affluent cities. They're much more applicable in communities and smaller cities, etc. So they tend to be guided by, Flatiron. If you're going to choose one epicenter in the world, it's probably Flatiron in New York City. And it usually goes through a couple of years of absolute hype where everyone is running around town trying every new thing. There's not much loyalty. You basically go in, try whatever the intro offer is, and then rush off to the next one. Then my observation would be is that there's a little bit of fatigue and people sort of get sick of running around town working out if there'll be a shower and a car park. And then they start to pick the ones that they really love. Now, in the boutique market, because it's very specialist, you've got to fall in love with that workout to go back. It's not just a matter of I go to a club and it's kind of got all the equipment I like. It's got to be, I love this. It's not just like it or think it's good. It's got to be awesome, because you're actually dealing in the currency of experience now. So, and it's got to be amazing to want to go back, and for me to then go from my intro offer to typically a 10 or 20 block or I might go on to a monthly membership. So we're sort of seeing that happening, and I'm following the trends around the world. From a technology point of view, the boutiques have had a big advantage because they just focus on one thing, and they also have a much smaller membership typically. So you might, in a boutique, which is a specialist offering or small set of offerings delivered very purposefully with high experience, high touch all the way through. And you can do a bunch of things. You can pay as you go. I can book online. I pay right there. I can order my shake there, typically. So I get this one experience, beautifully promoted, beautifully carried through from the moment I arrive at the studio. And some of them have tech plays within their workouts. Some you might be wearing technology to work out what heart rate's happening for Orange Theory. You have the option at F45 to use MyZone, etc. Others are just purely the experience. And queen of the category, Soul Cycle, is really about turning the lights off and not measuring metrics, but really trying to shift your soul within an environment where you're shoulder to shoulder, tapping back with a whole lot of people who are also there to pretty much take from the Church of Soul Cycle. So you've kind of got those range of experiences. And then what they do is they follow you out of the studio. You have this wonderful experience, and then you start getting the little nudges through the day. How are you feeling? Are you coming back tomorrow? There's 2 bikes left in the class at 4 o'clock tomorrow. Your friend's going to be there. So you've basically got this relationship that is touching you all the way through the day, whether you're in the studio or not. And because it's a very small community, like maybe 200 to 300 active users, they're familiar, they're people just like you, and they're motivated just like you, and motivating that small group of people is much easier than a club base of thousands of people who are there for hundreds of different reasons. And, we're all struggling with the retention issue, but it is much easier to deliver when it's a small, tight offering of something that you love, surrounded by people just like you. So I see the technology in the boutiques enabling it in all sorts of different ways. They predominantly use social media. Very few are using traditional, unless they're part of a big hotel chain or a mall or something like that. So social. They have online booking and paying systems, and then they have awesome trackability. So whether you're with an aggregator like ClassPass or one of the many local varieties, or whether you do it yourself, you know who came, how often, where you sat, what you like. And then if you are on a bigger aggregator, you also know that they go to that yoga studio, that martial arts place, and then they're also getting their massages there and their haircut there, and it's becoming this catchment for all services. So that's what I'm seeing. And then within the experiences, I'm seeing a lot of tech, whether it's something like F45, dropping in the actual workouts, which are algorithm-based, to feed their circuit format, or whether it's wearing MyZone or similar heart rate zones, or Orange Theory, very heart rate driven, of course, that's their whole promise. So you're sort of seeing that to bring life to the experience, whether it's through the measurement of metrics or whether it's enhancing light, sound, the actual experience in the room. And then you're definitely seeing it in the after service as well. So sorry, very long answer to a very short question.
Oh, it's a very thorough answer. And when we were talking about some trends like, working remotely, all these other things that are changing with technology, our lifestyles, and whether it was Les Mills, streaming classes, or we see ClassPass Live now, where you actually wear the heart monitor and the coach is streaming, or all these even Mind Body, all these different. Wexer is a product, all these different at home, even some brands doing their own content like Basic Fit, with Renee and that group, they have their own content production. What do you think about the on-demand marketplace and really the at-home, the Peloton offering, these kind of things? Is this something that you see continuing to surge? Do you see as a slight augmentation of the boutique experience? What are your observations on that?
Yeah, I think the surge is definitely going to continue and increase. I think both, because we're living in times now of convenience. With technology, we're now able to take experiences with us, and some of those experiences aren't the same as being in person, and it doesn't matter sometimes. Some are getting damn good, as you know, with VR and AR sort of coming online and finally getting good. We're just sort of at the clumsy end of all of that, but it's going to be amazing. I mean, you and I have had VR experiences where physiologically your body is responding as if you were there. So it's only a matter of time. I mean, watch the movies, guys. You just have to be Ready Player One. You're there. You are in the experience. You're immersed in it. And so I think it's definitely going to surge, and I think it's growing as well. And when I mentioned before that people don't always have the same expectation around an experience, I think that's interesting. And I always use the example of me sitting here at home as you are at home. I sometimes don't have time to drive across town, find a car park, go and talk to people. I don't want to talk to people. I just want to get my 30-minute workout in, and I want to get back to my whatever presentation I'm working on next. So if that's what I need that day, that is what I value. I don't value the time, the 2 hours it's going to take me to do a round trip. I don't value the conversations. I just want the damn workout. So if that's the case on that day, my expectations are different. And even from an experiential point of view, think about our concert. You and I buy music. We want it beautifully produced, but then we'll still go and see Pink live or, some great performer because you are in the room with brilliance, and that has a different offering. There's only something that's going to happen on that day, and you had to be there to experience it, or to be in the front row, or to be amongst all these crazy zealots either side. I mean, that's a different experience. So I think sometimes we seek those festival feelings, and that's what everyone's cashing in on when you go to something like a Daybreaker, or you go to an event that has a top DJ, and then it's got a top influencer, and then it's got a great all the products and all the lotions and all the food and all the apparel. They're all coming together to create a super experience. Or I just want to get my workout in. So I think there's different ways. The at-home market is absolutely exploding. And, first half of my career, 25 years with Les Mills, I mean, they're doing it probably one of the best in my humble opinion, because they've been doing it for many, many decades. So right. They're very, very good at it. They've just filmed at Fox Studios in Australia. They've filmed at the Dome. I mean, they're filming at places where Gaga, presents concerts. So it's absolutely phenomenal. And, we've had Thor, he's gone out with an app. We've had all the big brands are beginning to have a digital footprint as well, because they know that when you leave that studio, all you need is sick kids, a busy day, got to work at home, snow, can't be bothered going out, don't want to put a face of makeup on, whatever it is, they want the option. Now, Peloton schooled us. It's a great example. We won't talk about the IPO because that wasn't so stellar, but let's talk about what they actually did. And everyone said, no one's going to pay $2,000 or $3,000 to ride on a bike at home. You're not going to be able to connect an audience. You can't do that unless we're in person. It's not going to be good enough. People aren't going to get a workout. And then what did they do? They went and sold 1 million of them. People paid $3,000. There are people who are more passionate about Peloton than there are a number of live face-to-face classes that I could quote, off the back of my hand. It is incredible. They brought in leaderboards. I could be cycling against Hugh Jackman. I know what my metrics are. I love the Aussie guy who cracks all of these jokes. So they were able to hyper-personalize and make a community in a very connected way, in a way that no one thought possible. But of course it's possible because they've done it. And look how addictive gaming is for a 12-year-old boy, social media for all our teenage children. It is the same crack. And the good thing is we've stitched exercise to that. So it's actually, for me, I love it because it's a positive habit. We have all these negative habits that are out there. This is a positive habit. So is there going to be more of this? Damn straight there is. And it's going to be an option. And we are going to operate, I believe, in a greater ecosystem, which is sometimes live. Sometimes it might be somewhere in between. And sometimes it's going to be something that's projected from my phone or in my ear. Sometimes I just love to be guided. I don't need to see something. Pump's a great example for me. I've done a few deadlifts in my time. I know what a deadlift looks like. I can just have that in my ear and just be, out in nature. I don't necessarily want to be watching a screen. So you're going to get all of those proliferations for sure.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. We were talking earlier about the boutique phenomenon, these streaming home phenomenons, for example, as being very millennial focused. And you and I were talking about this whole millennial thing with respect to some of the observations that boomers, that was all the talk years ago. Now you hardly hear about it anymore. And then something about the fact that, millennials are now the key influence. But as we were discussing, boomers' net worth in the Western Europe and the United States is some 12 times larger They have a lot more money. And then also people who are in their 50s or 60s. I know you're only 29, Emma, so you wouldn't understand this. They don't see themselves as being that age, and it doesn't mean that they're opted out. Like I surprisingly test as a millennial. When you take the Pew survey online, it tells you. And there are some general misnotions about that, and the boutique phenomenon is very much tied to that. What do you give us your insights on that, having worked so closely in the market and this millennial phenomenon, please?
Yeah, the first thing I would say, and my husband sent me this morning, is there's a fabulous chat, and maybe we can put those in. I don't know if you have notes, but maybe we could reference that. But Simon Sinek just did probably the best, most comprehensive rundown of millennials for me. And it came very much from the perspective of we've actually created these poor souls. This is something that actually happened to them because of the environment they're in, because of the technology they've had to absorb, because of us being over-parenting and telling that they're amazing and they can be whatever they want, and then them hitting the real world and working out in a nanosecond that maybe it's going to be a little bit harder than that. So Simon really addresses some things which I think are very, very important, just out in the world. So that's the first point I'd say, and I'd point to that because I think it's revolutionary thinking, and I think we all need to help our guys. I mean, I've got teenage kids. I know you guys have got, we're always looking at how we can help these guys. So that's the first thing. I completely agree with you. I haven't heard a boomer conversation in several years now. It's like they all died. Now, I know they didn't because I still meet them and all of these things. But you and I always talk about being millennial behaviour. Your behaviours are millennial, you test millennial. And my good example is I've just come from Midtown Athletic, from a Les Mills event actually, and we were presenting with a whole lot of club owners. And a guy came to me at the end, Michael, and he said, look, this has been a great presentation. I was presenting on building a badass boutique and how you can put those learnings into your club. And he said, this is great, but it has nothing to do with my demo because they're all older. And so we sort of started going through his points one by one. And then he gave me this example of an 82-year-old member who had just taken a selfie by the leaderboard on the MyZone. He was wearing his MyZone strap and he was on the leaderboard, 82 years old. And I said, dude, that's exactly what I'm talking about. He just took a selfie. He had all these millennial-facing behaviours. In fact, millennials don't take selfies. I take a selfie. My kids hate me for it. So, the point was everything we're learning about the millennials can be applied to the boomers. My parents are actually quite tech savvy because it's their only way to keep in touch with the world, and they happen to have more time now than they used to. They're very interested in studies. They're very interested in metrics. And I think we assume things too much. I also attend a lot of boutiques, and while they are still skewing very female, typically 80%, and very young, typically millennial, if you go into an Orange Theory or something that's more community-based or something in a particular area, it is going to skew towards the natural community of that area. So I go to plenty of places where maybe I can't run as fast on the treadmill, maybe I'm walking on the treadmill, or maybe I'm going to a Barry's-like workout, and maybe I'm just doing a double floor program instead of, hitting the high-impact type stuff. So I think they are finding their way because they still love the environment. Everyone still wants a great environment. They still want high service. They might not necessarily like to pay $35 a ride or a treadmill, because my parents certainly laugh at me when I talk to them about boutiques. They're very value conscious, but they certainly love the touches. And I see the boutiques, once it's more accepted, as just another model that we're doing, and as we start to see them back end into clubs, which I know we're going to talk about shortly, I think we're going to be able to share these forms of exercise with a much broader age range. And I've had a number of conversations with people. For goodness sake, do something that's age appropriate for your market. Maybe take the impact out, maybe change the choice of music a little bit, maybe look at some of the activities, and maybe look at your screening process and what sort of technology would or would not make sense, because you can do it experientially or you can do it measured. And does your membership care? And yep. those are the key drivers. I mean, you and I know we're in data-led times. Our market will tell us what they want, but they might not know what they want. So you've just got to try stuff, and then whatever works, and you keep going. So that those would be my views. Yeah.
I love those views. I think they're right on. We were talking about, also ideas of concepts, whether they be boutique or not, in makeup, and some of the innovation happening in the market. And we know some of the things you cited, in the use of tech with the boutique market and the fact that they do singular things and the integration tech around that. Then also we were speaking earlier about some of the innovative ideas happening with tech and without. So one of the things we discussed was Lifetime Fitness, putting in these WeWork type spaces because of the percentages of workers working remotely. We talked about Renee and Basic Fit again and how automated their processes are with their heavy use of highly sophisticated camera systems that have intelligence built in. We see, just all these different examples of operators, no matter what their market's in. It may be low price, it may be, maybe very high value, high service, but just the continuation of innovation in some ways that are less sophisticated than others. It's just understanding what you said. What is your market and what are they really seeking and understanding that? What do you see in the realm of innovation, be it boutique or otherwise, be in full service and budget? What do you see as some other trends that you find very notable as you travel around?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's sort of, the phase that we're in right now, it's very me too. Like every market I go to, there's a Barry's look-alike, there's a Rumble look-alike. There's we're beginning to see, like I mentioned before, a proliferation of pricing models, of business models. So pretty much whatever you can think is beginning to happen out there. So you're beginning to see low cost budgets, things like more yoga in the UK, or people beginning to perhaps bring the functionality or perhaps all the bells and whistles down a little bit in order for it to be a little bit more affordable, because there has to be a point, especially if we head into a recession, which everyone's warning is coming. People are not going to be paying $30 a ride or $25 every workout. They're going to have to find other options like, could I do this cheaper? Could I get an app or an on-demand app that, perhaps I'm paying $15 a month and I'm still getting all these great workouts and I can do them wherever I am. So I think, that's part of the innovation. I think your example of life is a really good one. We started building third spaces in Equinoxes, and people just start hanging out there and you make your money back. They're in your bricks and mortar more often. They're buying at the cafe. They're bringing their friends there. Friends are liking it and joining, all of that stuff. So I think there's a good intention behind it, but there's also a financial payoff because people are, spending time there as well. I think of LA Fitness, LAF, they've bought in hit by LAF. So the whole concept of putting a boutique back into a club, and I was speaking very passionately with Philip Mills the other day, and they've just built, basically 3 beautiful studios and renovated basically the garage in Auckland, spent a few million. So not everyone has a few million, but to be able to reimagine that and have an immersive studio with the trip, if you're talking about really living in an immersive environment, and then having their conca and their ceremony classes as well, which they're versions of boxing and high intensity training. So this is beginning to happen. And Philip gave the great example, and someone said, well, how can you prove that it's working? And he said, well, before we did it, we had a CrossFit gym in there that had 500 people coming through a month. And now we have 5,000 people coming through a month. So he'd say that's a pretty sturdy metric. So by reshaping and moving with the times, I think there's ways to redo your facility regardless of what it is. We've also seen some brands, not all, but we've seen some brands like yoga traverse from studio, which was, we used to be a studio, but we didn't have tech, we didn't have high customer service, it was just expertise. You were paying for yoga or you were paying for martial arts or something like that. We're beginning to see some of those like Gotham or like a lot of the yoga begin to introduce some of the boutique aspects, the automation, the booking online, the paying online, the lifting of service, towels and drink bottles and juices afterwards and things like that. So you're beginning to see all roads kind of leading to a more specialised service. And then the great examples in the clubs, I mean, I think David Lloyd was one of the first movers. I mean, Gymbox, if you're going to go right back, I mean, they were a series of boutiques anyway out of the UK. You've got, Blaze, which has been separately marketed, and that's, sort of a treadmill, martial arts and an athletic training blend. Let's work out how hard we can work you, put you in 3 of the most on-trend things, put it club in a club, market it separately, put a whole programming team on it and roll it through the brand. LAF are doing the same thing. Les Mills is doing the same thing. Midtown Athletic, I mean, great example. Let's have a field, which is a studio. And I did a class there the other day, Voltage, phenomenal. there were over 30 people, all doing box jumps and treadmill running and ropes and skipping ropes and all of that stuff, loving it. And we were sitting there blended with the personal trainers and blended with people just working out on their own. And sure, you have to work out the music thing, and they've done a great job of that. But this is the new studio, and then you go to yoga, which is just, you feel like you're in India somewhere. So this is the new world. People are, wanting to be delighted. And so there's a number of ways you can do it. Price, facility, and stepping into the future. Everyone always asks me what's going to happen with boutiques. I always answer, the good ones will scale and the bad ones will fail. And of course, clubs will start to get the lesson around lifting service and automation and segmentation of customer data, et cetera, et cetera. And it's going to be a very expensive lesson for some. Some clubs won't make it either, I don't think, because they're getting stuck in the middle. They don't have enough service, or they don't have enough cost cutting and automation like Basic Fit, where basically you're operating a club on a head and a half, good luck, or no heads, like there's plenty of models out there now that are 100% just check yourself in, we'll put a cleaner through occasionally, and that's about it. And everything's automated, it's all app-based, or it's all off some kind of console. Yeah.
No, I agree. And it's all part of maturation, where all these brands have to either reinvent themselves or suffer the consequences, right? It's challenging. Some of them are going to be able to do it. Some of them aren't. And that's just the way it is. It's just the way it is in this kind of era of change. Well, Emma, I know the listeners, I want to ask you something I didn't tell you before as a question. I'll surprise you. What advice would you have in general? You gave some advice before for fitness professionals today, given your experience level, and for operators. What are a couple of the words or gems of wisdom you might want to share with those folks who are listening in?
Right. So I guess for Fit Pros, and there's a lot of people circling health and wellness, because we know it's part of the $4.2 trillion health and wellness. We know that there's a lot to be got from our area financially. We also know that, health is the new wealth, and, pretty much you lose that, you lose everything. And I think people are really finely tuned around that right now, especially with, the uprising of obesity and mental health issues and all of that stuff. So I think there's a romanticism, I think, around our industry right now, which is, as well as obviously a big economic engine. But my advice would be, enter it for the right reasons, know why you're doing it. And, whether you're trying to attract millennial workers or whether you're trying to motivate yourself over the decades of hard work that work always turns into, for goodness sake, make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons. So, I'm big on passion, understand your why, know what you value. And that's always you're going to need those on the days you don't feel like getting up, and your staff are definitely going to need it as well. So always be founded on a deep why, and then really do your due diligence around things. And there's friends that I've told that I think they should get into a franchise business for fitness, and there's others that I've said I don't think they should, because I don't think it's a great idea. So from a business perspective, if you look at the things that are really working right now, say you want to enter a boutique market, are you going to be able to get a good enough real estate deal? Are you going to be able to get enough payroll costs, because those are going to be your big hits? And if you can't make that work, and if I look in London right now, there's a bunch of businesses that cannot make that work. The rents have gone so high, the employment law has become such that it's very, very hard to employ. I think it's great that we have workers' rights, but at some point you have to make the machine work. And then if you're all having to discount because you're on various aggregators and you're having to compete with the 9 other boutiques on the same block, you get pushed into this price war. So I just think it's very, very important that you understand, this is the business, this is the area I'm serving, I need 300 active members paying this amount of money at a discounted rate in order for me to survive and get what I believe I'm valuable. And then I better have a bit of contingency, because if there is a bit of a recession around the corner, what am I going to need for that? Who do I partner with, to get out of there? So it's just having a level head, but also being driven by the passion, as well as the business needs that need to be in place, I think.
That's great advice. Emma, thanks for making time. I know you're such a busy lady, and we very much appreciate, I certainly appreciate you for all the kindness and advice and support you've given me. And I know a lot of people out there appreciate you for all the passion and effort you make for the industry at large. And so very fortunate and thankful that you spent a few moments with us today, sharing your views and thoughts on what's going on in the world out there. And I will be giving you shameless plugs for your books and other things in the show notes and as the listeners have heard in the intro. So I appreciate you so much.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much. And, you're one of my fabulous mentors, and I wouldn't be in this industry and certainly heading in the right direction without you. So thank you for your podcast and the many businesses that you influence, and for the special influence that you have on me as well. Thank you.
Oh, you're very kind. I appreciate it.
Hello, listeners. This is Bryan O'Rourke, and thanks so much for listening to the Fitness Plus Technology Podcast. The podcast is made possible by the Fitness Industry Technology Council, a consortium of global brands working together to enhance the adoption of technologies in the fitness space. Our company, Videri Ventures, which is invested in Vertimax, Montezuma, Gold's Gym, Houston, Texas, and Fitness 24/7 Thailand, also underwrites the podcast, along with our service companies, Integris Advisors, Moon Mission Media, and others. Please feel free to share this podcast with your colleagues. And if I can be of any assistance to you, don't hesitate to reach out, bryanko'rourke@gmail.com, or find me on any of the major social networks. Have a great day, and thanks for listening.